So you might recall that PBS Frontline, right? They do a lot of documentaries. You might recall that they did an interview. They sat down and did an interview with Al-Jolani. Okay, so Al-Jolani, well, he has a long history, right? First, he's in Al-Qaeda. Then he's commanding al-Nusra, Jabhat al-Nusra, which is basically, Al-Qaeda in Syria, right? And then now he's the leader of HTS. So HTS is an abbreviation of, it's an acronym for Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is basically the jihadist rebranding of al-Nusra, right? So it's just basically one rebranding of Al-Qaeda to the next. And he's in charge of that now. And why is HTS so important? Well, they're in command of Idlib, right? So if you look at the map in Syria, Idlib is the last, as it's been called, right? It's the last terrorist stronghold left in Syria. And it's very important because we're talking about tens of thousands of fighters. It's nothing small, right? So now in 2021, and it's the situation has not changed that much in the last a year or so. I'm gonna just pull this up on the map for you so you can understand what we're talking about. Most of Syria has been taken back, right, by the Syrian army. So we're talking about all of this, right? Now, of course, you still have an American base at Al-Tanaf, an air base. Everything here in Hasake and Deir Zor, these regions up here in the northeast, they're still under U.S. occupation, and you have the Kurdish SDF, which is helping them. And then over here, we have Idlib. So Idlib city and Idlib province. And this is where you have a huge presence of HTS. And Mr. Jolani over here, right? This guy, he's in command. He's in charge. Now, PBS sat down and did a documentary with him, right? And it's very interesting for several reasons because the way that they've talked to him, I mean, it's kind of funny. It's really, the only way I can break it down for you is if we take a look at the documentary, right? So first things first, it's just so hilarious that he's dressed up in a suit because this guy has never worn a suit in his life, probably, right? He's always with the military slacks, and there you go. So let's get down to business. I really want to play a couple of clips for you and then break down what is happening in this documentary. Some things that you may not realize otherwise. Okay, so let's take a look.
There are some people in Washington who think it may be wise to work with Jolani, including a top American diplomat in the region during the Bush, Obama, and Trump administrations, James Jeffrey.
Look, he's the least bad option of the various options on Idlib, which is one of the most important places in Syria, which is one of the most important places right now in the Middle East. When there is not the normal setup of nation states and of international norms and rules, you wind up with groups like this that do things you don't like, but in the here and now are the folks you have to deal with to avoid even worse things.
Wow. I mean, he just comes right at you. You heard what he said, right? So this is Special Envoy Jeffrey, right? So he was ambassador to Turkey for a while. As the narrator explains, he's been in the Bush, Obama, and Trump administrations, right? And he was a special envoy to Syria, right? And he's a U.S. ambassador is telling you that the least bad option is Al-Qaeda. Well, I mean, it's not surprising, right? They created Al-Qaeda. It's just this is astonishing to me because if an ambassador, dude, Al-Qaeda attacked the United States on 9/11, right? Jolani himself, right? There's documentaries about Jolani. He himself was killing Americans in Iraq, right? During the insurgency. You would expect Americans to be like, what the hell is going on? Why is one of our ambassadors, our top man in the Middle East, why is he endorsing this Al-Qaeda figure? And he's not just a fighter, he's a commander, right? He just said it straight to your face, right? So the United States thinks Al-Qaeda is better than having a secular, stable Syria under Bashar al-Assad. No surprise there, right? So when we tell you that the United States is funding jihadists, is funding terrorist groups, right-wing terrorist nut jobs in Syria, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not about just Operation Timber Sycamore. No, he's sitting here and telling it to your face. He's telling it to your face. Let's continue.
Syria made clear that they were going to do everything in their power to make sure the United States failed.
This was central Baghdad today as Saddam Hussein's regime finally lost control. The fall of Baghdad was...
Right? So he's talking about Al-Jolani's activities in Iraq back then. Okay? They're giving you some background.
The U.S. military and the U.S. government were woefully unprepared to deal with the reality on the ground in Iraq.
That's what you get when you loot.
I cannot begin to describe the idiocy of this whole endeavor.
Okay, so this is where this guy is confusing me, because he clearly says, well, you know, going into Iraq is idiocy, right? He just said, I cannot begin to describe the idiocy of this endeavor. And yet he thinks that supporting al-Qaeda in Idlib in Syria is fine. Wow. Right? This is what's so great about American or Western politicians and also Western media. So the BBC, the Guardian, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they all do this, right? They all support the wars, like Iraq. And then after it's too late, they're like, oh man, this was so stupid of us. You know, we should have like maybe been a bit more careful. Oh, like 1 million people died. Oops. Really? Now you've finally woken up. And in the same breath, he's telling you, no, but we totally got it this time. This time it's fine, right? So let's continue.
الأبرياء كنا ضده، يعني لست وحدي، أنا كان كثير من الناس التي يعني لديها ضمير ولديها وعي ولديها فهم صحيح للإسلام والدين كانت ضد قتل أي بريء، حتى لو كان يريد أن يتسبب في قتل كم كبير من العدو وأن يقتل شخص واحد بريء. نحن كنا ضده يعني لهذا الأمر.
Why didn't you quit then? I mean, why stay with an army whose major tactic is to do mass suicide bombings that inevitably or intentionally killed civilians?
يعني هو نحن كنا دائما نسأل.
Dude, I mean, I'm not even sure what to say to that. I'm not even sure what to say to that. He's just casually sitting there like a choir boy. You know, like we never meant to kill anyone. And yeah, you know, it was just like we didn't understand, you know. It was just like, we asked ourselves what's going on, but we weren't really on board with this. He sounds like one of those Nazis on trial after World War II. Like, I was just following orders. Right? So when he wants to, he can take up arms and kill innocent people. Because remember, what we're talking about here is not just resistance. We're talking about the fact that they were blowing up civilians, right? They were doing these suicide attacks. They were blowing up civilians. The majority of the casualties had literally nothing to do with who they're resisting. It's terrorism, right? And now he's like, well, you know, man, I don't know. It's just like we kind of got caught up in the suit, right? He's wearing the suit as well.
Rise through the ranks of Zarqawi's organization and caught the attention of a CIA analyst.
I mean, my job was to identify some of the initial leaders of Zarqawi's organization and to keep track of who is in his network and who's helping make decisions.
Jolani came up as a commander or of some sort in Zarqawi's organization?
Yes.
Can you say anything about that?
Probably not. I mean, he wasn't top tier, but he had cell leadership at that point.
Aha. And now you need to start paying attention. Now you need to start paying attention. What did he say, the narrator? He said, Jolani caught the attention of a CIA analyst. And that's more than in just one way. Pay attention. Pay attention.
Around 2005, Jolani's jihadist career in Iraq was cut short. He was arrested by U.S. troops in Mosul. He would spend most of the next 5 years imprisoned in Camp Bucca near the Kuwaiti border. Around 100,000 detainees came through Bucca, including 9 future al-Qaeda in Iraq and ISIS commanders.
In fact, it was the training ground for a whole new generation of Middle Eastern extremist terrorists. The most extreme elements had total control of the camp. The U.S. military didn't see Bucca as a big problem. But what was happening in Bucca was it was a wholly owned subsidiary of al-Qaeda.
Right, so let me explain something to you. This Camp Bucca,
Jolani.
right? You know what's happening there? They're bringing in all these terrorists they've arrested, right? And it's turning into a factory. He just told you have nine important figures that came out of there. One of them is Al-Jolani, who we're talking about right now. Guess who also was detained and imprisoned in Camp Bucca? Baghdadi, right? So the one that Trump allegedly killed, the head of ISIS, right? Isn't it weird how the United States always has contact and always has some kind of relationship with these terrorists before they suddenly become a threat? Isn't that weird? Right? Osama bin Laden, Zawahiri, they're giving them weapons. They're giving them training. They're giving them logistics and intelligence to fight the Soviets, right? When they mentioned Zarqawi before, correct me if I'm wrong, he was also detained before. They also had him in jail, right? Jolani, Baghdadi, in Camp Bucca. Is that weird? Is that weird? So we know for a fact, we know for a goddamn fact, this is crystal clear that the United States, the CIA, has helped train, fund, arm terrorists all over the world. Whether we're talking about the Contras, we're talking about, in Latin America, the death squads, we're talking about the Mujahideen, who later become Al-Qaeda, right? In Pakistan and Afghanistan. They always have some kind of contact with them. Here, the same thing in Iraq. The exact same thing. They know all these people. Look at what happened in Europe, in Paris, in London. All of these terrorists are known to the governments beforehand. They know their names. They have files on them. They're surveying them. And then all of a sudden, they just never seem to be able to do anything before they act. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? Again, they're not hiding it. They're not hiding it. They openly support these people. And the only difference is that now they say it to you. Now they say it to you. They admit it to you. But they're doing this before. Prepping him, recruiting him. I don't know.
He was around 23 when he arrived. He said he used his time to write a 50-page paper on how to fight jihad back home in Syria.
البحث تقريبا تحليلي الخطة ما يقارب تقريبا 50 صفحة سردت فيها تاريخ سوريا وجغرافيا سوريا والتنوع الطائفي في سوريا وكيف وصل عائلة الأسد إلى الحكم وما إلى ذلك.
Do you have a copy of that document?
No, لكن ما عندي ضاعت في دمشق.
Oh, look at how he's lying. Look at his goddamn face, man. He's such a terrible liar. He's such a terrible liar. He was probably writing some goddamn paper for the CIA. No, but seriously, man. Do you know this guy's not Syrian? Do you know he's born in Saudi Arabia? And now he's writing essays. And now he wants to liberate Syria. You're not even Syrian. What? يعني منين جاي انت? Unbelievable. And he lost it, right? The look on his face. I love this, man. I love this. It gets better. Don't worry. It gets better.
Jolani told me that after his release from prison, he met with a jihadist leader, Abu Muslim, in Mosul. Abu Muslim then suggested Jolani send his paper, the one he had written while in Bucca, to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the new head of the Islamic State of Iraq, ISI.
كتبت له ما أفكر به في سوريا لي عليها ملاحظات كثيرة لا تنقل تجربة العراق إلى سوريا.
Iraq today was swept by another wave of deadly attacks.
He says that he stressed that he didn't want to fight a sectarian war as Zarqawi had.
Now tops 200.
He wanted to fight Assad. Jolani's stated plan was to topple Assad, seize Damascus, and set up an Islamic State in Syria under Sharia law.
So once again, I find this absolutely hilarious that he's like, he's giving his homework basically to his senior commanders. And this guy, again, he's not Syrian. Who are you to come to Syria and decide you're going to invade the country and establish whatever it is you're trying to establish there? I mean, to be fair, to give you the full background, he's born in Saudi Arabia and he moved to Syria as a kid or something. But he's not Syrian, man. Right? His training, his money is definitely not from Syria. This guy's a CIA asset. They say it right now in the documentary. You'll see. I love this. I love how it's just all out in the open. This is the United States. They work with Al-Qaeda. This is all bullshit that they're going to hunt terrorists in Afghanistan. No, they're working like this with them. These are their friends.
Jolani began his attacks on Assad by sending young fighters on suicide missions.
لو كان لدينا الطائرات لاستخدمنا الطائرات ولو كان لدينا مدافع تعوض عن العمل الاستشهادي لحفظنا هؤلاء الإخوة.
Again, do you see how he's trying to whitewash his own record? He's saying, "Oh, I never meant to send anyone on a suicide mission. Look, we had a shortage of weapons. It's not our fault."
Watching Nusra grow inside of Syria, and he seems to be following the same playbook as Hamas, a little bit of Hezbollah and the Muslim Brotherhood.
What? Okay, look, what is that salad? What is that salad? You know what the problem is with this? Like most people around the world who are watching this, like, oh yeah, those all sound very exotic and Muslim-y, right? What does Hamas have to do with Hezbollah, have to do with the Muslim Brotherhood? She talks about them like they're all the same group. Oh my God. And she's a CIA analyst. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? That he's like all three groups. She doesn't explain. They don't say it. You just like throw out these like words, like a goddamn word salad. What does that mean?
That year, 2015, I traveled across Syria's regime-controlled areas.
There we go. There's a secret word, regime, right? So you know how PBS and CNN and well, you know, PBS, to their credit, they do make good documentaries, right? Once in a while. But when they're trying to appear objective, right? Like, oh, we're neutral. We're trying to show both sides. And, you know, we're just sitting down with a casual jihadist as a $10 million bounty on his head, right? When they say the word regime, you know they're not neutral. This word only appeared after 2011. This is the State Department lexicon, okay? This word regime in regards to Syria, right? You heard it before in regards to Saddam, in regards to Iraq, right? So when Donald Rumsfeld comes to Iraq to sell Saddam Hussein chemical weapons, oh, look, he's the benevolent president of Iraq. But 2002, when they want to destroy Iraq, oh no, now it's a regime. And when the Queen invites Bashar al-Assad and his wife to Buckingham Palace and has tea with them, or Tony Blair and his wife invite Bashar al-Assad and Esma al-Assad to number 10 Downing Street, then back then he's a benevolent Syrian president. Oh, but now it's a regime, right? So when they start the project to go in and dissect the country and pillage it and plunder it, now they got to change the language. It's no longer a president or a government, it's a regime. So anyone who uses this language, I can't take them seriously because they're talking out of their ass. I can't take them seriously. Regime-controlled areas. You mean Syria? Like, seriously, we have to make a point about this. That's like saying, yeah, you know, man, I was driving down Route 69 under the Biden regime-controlled areas. What the fuck? What the fuck does that even mean? It's just Syria. What? That's how ridiculous it sounds. Oh, you don't like extremists messing your country up? Okay, you're a Bidenist. This is how brain dead people sound.
This is Latakia, the heartland of Syria's Alawite community, a small but powerful religious minority aligned with Assad. The Alawites have lost thousands of young men and...
Oh, he thinks it's just Latakia that's aligned with al-Assad? Wait till he hears about the rest of Syria.
Women fighting Nusra, ISIS, and other rebel factions. Their pictures line the streets of the provincial capital. Nearby, Syria's rich frolic on Latakia's Mediterranean beaches.
Okay, I honestly don't even know what he's talking about here. What does that mean? Syria's rich are on Latakia's beaches. Everyone goes to Latakia, as we say. Literally everyone. It's not like some kind of some Sandals Jamaica, exclusive beach resort. It's just Ladia. I really don't know what he's talking about. It's funny though. It's funny because he tries to make it look more exotic than it is. I wish, man, especially after this destruction.
In part, this represents what they are fighting for: a secular way of life away from Islamist influences.
Yeah, which is what all of Syria is fighting against. The entirety of Syria wants a secular, stable country. Look, man, I'm really not interested in arguing with a bunch of people who've, never stepped outside their town, who've never been there, because this is like debating algebra with a monkey. Most Syrians don't want Jolani. They don't want this Free Syrian Army / CIA / jihadist bullshit. They really don't. Look what that's got for them in the last 10 years. Compare that to what was, before. The answer is very easy. The answer is extremely easy.
In October 2015, Jolani said Alawite villages should be targeted. Jolani said there is no choice but to escalate the battle and to target Alawite towns and villages in Latakia.
Mm-hmm. You mean genocide?
Do we know?
That's complicated.
Don't you love it? Don't you love it how they lie? He's asking him, like, this guy you support, he said he wants to commit genocide against Alawites. Did we know that? Well, it's complicated. That means yes. That means yes. They knew. Of course they knew.
If those are civilian targets, thus attacking them is terrorist. It also is what national liberation movements and resistance organizations do.
No, it's not just terrorism. That's literally genocide. When you're trying to ethnically cleanse an area, kill a certain group, and it's not just with. This is not just with Alawites, because you have to be very careful here. With the mainstream media, with the Americans, what the corporate media wants you to believe is that what's happening in Syria is like some kind of religious conflict, right? This is the typical thing they use. They do this also with Palestine, right? Because that way they can paint it as like, oh, look at these like primitive people who are fighting over like which god, like Chen Kuger says, like talking out of his ass. There's literally fucking nothing to do with it. Syria, especially Syria, has so much racial diversity and religious diversity. There's no tolerance there. It's coexistence. Do you understand? So this is not about like, oh, look, these like hardcore Sunnis coming to kill these Alawites. That's a tiny part of it. You have ethnic cleansing, you have genocide, but that's not what the Syrian war is about. The Syrian war is it's a regime change plot by the West and other people in the region, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Israel. Right? Israel openly saying that they're working with Al-Qaeda, the ex-chief of the Mossad. We'll go watch that interview with Mahdi Hassan. We covered it. So be careful. Don't fall into this thing like they do this with Iraq as well to try and whitewash the U.S. invasion. Like, look, man, the invasion was bad, but these Arabs, they keep fighting Sunni and Shia. Shut the fuck up, man. Shut the fuck up. This is what white people have been trying to do in the Middle East for centuries. Divide people on sectarian lines. Dude, literally, look at the map. Look at the globe behind me. Who drew these borders? Who drew the border of Syria? Who drew the border of Turkey, of Lebanon? Of Jordan, Palestine. Who drew these borders? Iraq. This is the French and the British. And they did it especially on sectarian lines because they've been trying to divide people like that forever. They're trying to create divisions and amplify divisions. But it's not how they say it. So be careful. Be very careful.
You fought against al-Sham. You fought against those who stayed with al-Qaeda, Ras al-Din, and ISIS, of course, and even the Free Syrian Army that was backed by the CIA.
Did you see his face when he said CIA? Like, shit, he caught me.
CIA.
Yeah, we know, bitch. We know. But of course, you can't say this, right? When people were saying from the beginning of the war, these motherfuckers are CIA. Oh no, you're an Assadist. Oh no, you're a Ba'athist. Oh no. Dude, this is like, how ignorant are you? Have you never opened a fucking history book? The CIA even spy on other agencies in the US. Never mind what they do to other countries. We all know this now, that the CIA is involved since day one. You had SAS as well, right? British Special Forces coming in the whole time. They're still there. Of course, they're still there. the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, making up these Incostrat Arc, Zinc, Integrity Initiative bullshit to start a media war against Syria. They're all involved since day one. We know this. Because we have the files. We have the proof. It's not conjecture, we have proof. We got receipts. Look, did he deny being in the CIA? Well, being, in the Free Syrian Army, which is funded and supported and trained by the CIA. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't deny it one bit. Because his ass is guilty. His ass is guilty.
Jolani is clear. Society should be organized according to Sharia law. He claims to be a man of the people, but he opposes democracy.
Oh no, I thought that was only Bashar al-Assad who doesn't support democracy, huh? No? Oh, it turns out they're fucking Free Syrian Army. Their freedom fighters ain't too democratic themselves, are they? Huh?
Women hold no political offices in the Salvation government, and women's rights are severely restricted.
What?
I think that he has a...
Hold on, women's rights are severely restricted? Women's rights are severely restricted? That's not what Vice told me. That's not what CNN told me. This is what they want. This is what they want for Syria. Right? Oh, we want freedom and democracy. And turns out their freedom and democracy is this. A bunch of CIA spooks running around, giving guns and weapons to people like Jolani, who come from Al-Qaeda, who come from Al-Nusra, which is now Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. This is their idea of democracy. And they come and tell you, no. But they're both bad and we don't want this. Well, this is what it produces, you fucking smartass. Because if you knew what you were talking about instead of speaking out of your asshole, you would know that when you remove someone like Saddam Hussein, when you remove someone like Gaddafi, when you remove someone like Bashar al-Assad, you get this shit. But you don't know that because you're ignorant and you're dumb and you don't understand anything about this region. You don't speak its language. You've never been there. You talk out of your asshole. Everything you've ingested comes from mainstream media, from Western indoctrination. So of course you would think that. You think you can copy and paste liberal democracy wherever you like. And you don't even have it yourself. So I don't even know what you're copying to paste in the first place. Because if you look at the West, where is their democracy? Where is their freedom of press? Where are their civil liberties? It's all a farce, right? So they claim, oh no, I'm neutral. And it's no, this is so neutral. You can have a secular, stable Syria, or you can have this. Is that what you want? Apparently it is, because they won't learn their lesson, right?
Extremist Islamic view of how society should be organized, I would say a Salafist viewpoint, and he's willing to use force to achieve that.
What does that mean, a Salafist?
What that means is you run society by the Sharia and carry that out in the governance of the here and now should rule.
And he said he's willing to use force to achieve it, so he's a terrorist. And that's who the United States ambassador is saying the United States supports. All right?
الجولاني يسيطر على معظم مفاصل الحياة فيها كلمة لا تعجبه يتم اعتقال أي شخص تم اعتقاله من قبل عناصر التنظيم المنزل الأهلي. ليس هناك محاكمات، ليس هناك قضاء، ليس هناك محامي يمكن أنه تقوم بتوكيله.
In 2019, after a little over a year in prison, he was executed.
في اللحظات الأخيرة سامر طلب من السجناء إنه أخبروا أهلي، يعني أخبروا محمد وأخبروا والدي. السجانين أخبروهم إنه تم قتل هذا، يعني العبارة هي بالتنصيص تم قتل هذا الخنزير.
Human rights groups continue to document cases of torture in Jolani's prisons.
Here we go again. I mean, that is absolutely heartbreaking, that story. That is absolutely heartbreaking. That is vile, what they said about his brother. And I can see behind the dude, he has a Free Syrian army flag. I mean, I call it a colonial rag because it comes from French colonial times. So I don't, anyway, this is a whole other story, but I feel sorry for him and for his brother. And this is the problem, is that you have people, maybe with good interests, who have good intentions, who want some change. But who ends up actually taking control in the end? It's people like Jolani. Why? Because the United States is coming in and funding them. The United States has an agenda here. Nothing is happening without their interference. And look how many countries had to interfere. Look how many countries. We're talking a dozen countries here. All trying to take a piece of Syria, creating this chaos. So of course no one with good intentions is going to win, you know? You're not getting any kind of change because Uncle Sam has another agenda. That's what it is. And the people who suffer is the civilians. That's who gets sanctioned, starved, killed, maimed, bombed. It's the civilians. It's always.
التعذيب يعني.
There is no torture after we just saw how he literally tortured and killed that other guy's brother. I mean, this guy's a liar. We're talking about someone from Al-Qaeda. I mean, are we really going to have a debate here?
هذا الشيء مرفوض تماما يعني. هو ممكن تأتي منظمات حقوقية وتشرف على السجون وتشرف أو يعني.
Pay attention. What does he say here? He says, inspect the prisons. Remember this line. He says, human rights organizations can come and inspect the prisons. Okay?
تعمل جولة على السجون. نحن مؤسساتنا مفتوحة للجميع يعني. ما عندنا مشكلة يعني. وإذا كان هناك يوجد أخطاء فنحن نساعد في علاجها يعني.
You're saying Human Rights Watch, Syria Observatory for Human Rights, and other human rights groups have an open invitation from you to visit your prisons?
نحن ليس.
We do not have prisons. Dude, he literally just said, you can come visit our prisons. What is going on here? He can't help himself. He has to lie from one sentence to the next. He literally just said, you can come inspect our prisons. Really? Oh no, we don't have any prisons. Oh. By the way, you want to look at what happened? Do you remember how the entire Syrian civil war, as they call it, the civil war, started because some boys were killed? This is what Al-Jolani did, okay? This is from last year. This is April 2020. So this boy over here, Muhammad Tano, who's 19, was executed by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham because he criticized the militant group's leader. So Al-Jolani, this guy, that's who he criticized, and he executed him. So I'm really trying to understand how this guy is according to them, they say he's a better alternative. In what way? In what way? I mean, if you're for the love of God, I really cannot understand how you have so many people, right? The so-called anti-imperialist left, the human rights organizations, whatever, you name it. Dude, if you find yourself on the side of the United States and Al-Qaeda, I mean, do you not stop for 1 second and say, what the fuck am I doing here? No? I can assure you, man, Syria, if they wanted a revolution, they would have done it. Do you know there were so many revolutions in the period before Bashar's father took power? There was a guy who was president for 1 day. Maybe two, if I'm not mistaken. There were two people who were president for 1 day. You go and look at Wikipedia, there's literally a graph. You can see all of these coups that were happening like 1 week after the other. If Syrians wanted a revolution, they would have done it. In over 10 years, with sanctions, with a war, they would have done it. They would have done it. No one can withstand that. Who can withstand that, being attacked by Israel? Who can withstand being attacked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, the United States, France, Germany, the UK? Who can withstand that? And not to mention these people like Al-Jolani, all these terrorist factions. Who can withstand that and withstand sanctions and bombs? And not have the support of their people? That doesn't work, man. Just think about what you're saying. That doesn't work. There's no way. There's no way. Yeah, we don't have prisons, right? So he's a real joker. He's an absolute joker.
Turkey is trying to keep the Assad regime and its allies from targeting civilians and getting them running for their lives across the Turkish frontier into that country, a scenario they claim they can't handle, and that's a real fear.
Here is this large Syrian province. It borders Turkey. It is home to millions of Syrians. They have Islamists on the one side, and they have Assad's forces on the other. And they're hemmed in by a Turkish border that is effectively closed to them.
Okay, I'm really finding this hilarious because they're acting like Turkey has nothing to do with this. No, Turkey is occupying Idlib. Turkey is supporting HTS openly. They're supporting other groups also, like the Syrian National Army, as they call it, the SNA. It sounds like it's the real Syrian army, like the official armed forces of the Syrian Arab Republic. It's not. It's just that's just what it's called, and it's a group created and backed by Turkey. Right? So Turkey is protecting Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Turkey was insisting, and the West as well, the United States and their allies at the UN Security Council, that all of the aid from the United Nations has to go through where? Idlib. So they're insisting, like, no aid goes to the government in Damascus. No, it has to go to the nut job terrorists that we're supporting in Idlib. And of course, Turkey is occupying that region, right? They want to steal more land, just like they stole Antioch. They've stolen, tons of land from Syria, just after Sykes-Picot alone. Right? Never mind what happened to Armenia.
When I visited, a Salvation Government crew had recently repaved a washed-out road with gravel.
كله كان طين، هذا لا يمكن تمشي فيه، حتى الناس لما بتمشي بتغرز يعني هذا نموذج من آلاف النماذج.
Okay, what does that even mean? Do you see how he's trying to portray himself like, oh, look at me, I'm so benevolent. I'm rebuilding the infrastructure. We put gravel on this road. Really? Listen, man. Every single year before the war, there was infrastructure improvement in Syria. Okay? And it was much more than just putting some gravel on the road. Right? They had entire highways being built, bridges, tunnels. The electricity would not cut out anymore, right? That was a big problem in Syria. And now it's back because of what? Because of the war. But before it started in 2010, 2011, I was just talking to my cousin last week. There were no more electricity cuts. We were reminiscing about that. Now you get 4 hours to 8 hours maybe per day. But before the war started in 2010, there were no more electricity cuts. So they basically came and destroyed the entire fucking country and set it back 50 years. And they'll say, oh, look, we put some gravel on the road. Fuck you and fuck your gravel, you piece of shit. The country was improving regardless of what you want to say. It was improving because I seen it with my own fucking eyes. You ain't going to come here and tell me otherwise. What is this?
We repeatedly asked the Biden administration for comment, but they declined. A stated policy has not yet been issued on Idlib, HTS, and what to do about Jolani.
You know what? They don't need to state anything because just like under Bush, just like under Obama, just like under Trump, Joe Biden is a sponsor of terrorism because that's what the United States does. They go into Latin America, Central America, they go into Asia, they go into the Middle East, they go into Africa, and they train, fund, and arm terrorist groups. That's what they do. And they do it to overthrow other countries, to replace the leaders with leaders that are favorable to the United States. And this is the same goddamn thing. The only difference is they failed. Syria is the only country that has said, fuck you, screw you, to the Americans and to their imperialism. And not just the Americans. We're talking about Israel, Saudi Arabia. What country has withstood an attack 10 years long from that many parties? None. Show me one. Just one. Although, of course, every country is different. You know, with the example of Cuba, for example, Cuba's been under embargo for 60 years. That's also resistance to imperialism, a successful one. Right? So each country has its own struggle, own story. But this is a very important one as well. And I want to remind you of something because this Jolani figure, now he's commanding HTS. What was he commanding before? Al-Nusra. They just renamed it. It's just a rebranding, right? They have groups breaking off. They have groups forming. They just renamed them. It's the same gang. It's the same people. And it's always the same powers behind them. And what did he do? What did he do in 2013? What did he do in 2013? There's a town 1 hour from Damascus, which is called Maaloula. Maaloula. This town is very special because they speak Aramaic in this town. Aramaic. Not Armenian, Aramaic. Aramaic is what Jesus spoke. It's an ancient language, ancient Semitic language, right? So Hebrew and Arabic, they have their roots in Aramaic. This town still speaks it. It's a dead language. right? Do you know? I mean, have you ever heard of that? It's incredible. And as a matter of fact, this scumbag, Jolani, with al-Nusra at the time, this is what they did. Let me show you what they did to Maaloula. They came and desecrated it. They took the town. And look what they did to it. This is a picture of it. I'm just showing you a picture first. All right? Take a look. This is Maaloula. It's absolutely gorgeous. Right? Here you can see how it looks like. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. You have a covenant at the top, right? And you also have a monastery. This monastery is one of the oldest in the world. It's built in the 5th and 6th century. That's how old it is. 5th, 6th century AD. One of the oldest in the world. Right? And this is the covenant. Do you know what they did to the nuns here? They kidnapped them. They went and kidnapped the nuns. I've met these nuns, right? With my mother, with my grandmother, we've been to Maaloula a million times. Roni, who's been on the show as well, that's our favorite place to go. I can't count how many times I've been here. And I remember specifically one time we were invited in. We had coffee and sat down, and you know, my mother and my grandmother, they spoke with the head of the covenant, with the nuns there. They even have pictures. They kidnapped them. That's what this Al-Jolani did. Him and al-Nusra. And you think I'm making this up? It literally says it right here. Take a look at the Battle of Maaloula, right? So this is 2013. Look what it says down here. Al-Nusra, Jolani. There he is. He's in charge. This sack of shit kidnapped a bunch of nuns who have literally done nothing. And they desecrated, they smashed all of the religious artifacts. Absolutely heartbreaking. They kidnapped these nuns and held them hostages for months. And then he wants to come here and pretend like, oh, we don't torture people in Idlib. We're civilized. We're democratic. The minorities have nothing to fear. He says that in the documentary, in the PBS thing, right? We have nothing against minorities. You literally kidnapped a bunch of Christian nuns. You invaded an ancient Christian town and pillaged it. You fucking liar. But this is the thing. They don't mention that in the documentary. Do you think that guy who's sitting with him, the host, the anchor from PBS, the journalist, he never mentions it, what I just told you about Maaloula. And Jolani was in charge. You don't think that's an important thing to ask or to respond with when he says, oh no, we got no problem with minorities? You should tell him, well, why did you kidnap a bunch of nuns and you desecrated and you plundered this Christian town? Not to mention the other things. This is not just an isolated incident. Not a word. So you know, someone who has no clue about Syria, he comes and watches that and might believe this bullshit. Oh, look, he's a reformed man. Oh, wow, Idlib is so democratic. Yo, man, the propaganda is so unreal. It's so unreal. I swear to God, like this is like this is the equivalent of someone sitting down with a fucking KKK Grand Wizard and trying to make them look like they're a peace-loving, democracy-promoting champion of equal rights. That is exactly what the fuck this is. That is a perfect analogy for what is going on. And that tells you how sick, how twisted all this imperialist scum is. What they've been doing for 10 years. Just let that sink in. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I sat down and I picked out the most important parts and went through them for you. Go watch it if you will. But beware. Beware. It's full of propaganda just like anything else. Right? Anyone in their right minds knows that Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, you can't reason with these people. You can't reason with them. They're monsters. They're terrorists. They're not even acting by themselves. They're being sponsored by the CIA, by the United States and other countries. This guy is not even Syrian. Jolani is not even a Syrian. You're telling me that this guy from Saudi Arabia has the right to come and just grab and steal one of the biggest cities in Syria and an entire province? Fuck you. What is Turkey doing there? Fuck you too. This is not your country. This is not your land. We're not having a debate here. Piss off. But here in the documentary, they don't even tell you that he's not Syrian. They try to present it like, look, this guy is like an equal alternative to the government. What are you talking about? He's a foreign invader. He's a terrorist.